Askreddit thread. What's the most calculated thing you've ever seen an animal do? I made a crow friend while smoking on the porch. I gave it fragments of whatever food I could find on the way out. One day, I found an empty pack of marb on the porch. Puzzled, but I threw it away. A few days later, I found my crow bro standing behind 3 empty packs of cigarettes. I tried to pick them up to throw them away, but the crow bro was protecting them for some reason. Frustrated, but I gave it a small chunk of meat as I took another drag. As I gave it the meat, the crow picked up one of the packs and placed it in front of me. Then it hit me. The crow is trading with me. The trade went on for a few more times until the winter hit to Minnesota. TLDR, a crow traded cigarette packaging for food with me. This is easily my favorite one here. It's so freaking awesome. You should have recorded it. I find it incredible there are 2 completely separate stories in this thread about how crows trading things for food. I used to find dead mice in my dog's water bowl. I couldn't figure out why these stupid mice kept drowning themselves. Then one day, I was watching my dog stalking a moose on the back porch. She caught it in her teeth. Oh, mouse, not moose. Brought it to the water bowl and held it underwater and with her teeth until it drowned. Walked away like it was nothing. Scariest thing I've ever seen. My cat has this toy skunk about the size of a mouse would be. She always tries to drown it in the water bowl. I think that's why people that aren't empathetic scare so many people. Your dog isn't evil, just something to do. The idea that a person could do terrible things to another person and still be a relatively normal person is frightening. But why not just break the mouse's necks? Because dogs don't really have a sense of right or wrong. It's not going to think to itself, gee, it would be kinder to kill this small animal quickly instead of dragging it out. Same reasons lions will start eating a gazelle alive. They just don't give a shit. It's not that they're evil and want to see the thing suffer. They just literally don't have the capacity to register that suffering exists in other beings. Of course, you can argue this point and claim that different animals do or do not have varying degrees of this capability. But none have it to the extent that we do. That's precisely why you can't assign value judgments like evil to a dog. People love to go on and on about the cruelty of human beings, but the truth is we're the most compassionate species on the planet. It's just that with that compassion comes the capacity for great cruelty. You've turned your logic on its head. We are the cruelest species because we know better and can emphasize and do cruel things despite it. A few years ago, there were a few slices of bread in the middle of the street for whatever reason. A crow kept flying down and treating themselves, but whenever they did, one of the neighbor dogs came out and chased them off. The crow tried about 3 times to eat in peace, but the dog chased it off every time. So the crow then decided to land a little bit away from the slices of bread, and the dog ran towards it. The crow then flew off and landed about a meter away from where it just landed. The dog followed it again. The crow repeated this until the dog was in a different street, and then the crow came back and chowed down. Crows are supposedly very intelligent. Here's the thing, you just got jackdawed. What the fuck? Jackdawed. Very much so. We used to have a large murder fly-in almost every year. I'd say there were at least 50 plus birds. They would tear up our patio furniture, drive the dogs crazy, etc. So like any proper gun-toting southerner, my dad and my uncle would take turns taking them out. They had gotten down to the last 6 or 7 crows, and they could not kill them for anything. Crows recognize faces, so in the beginning hunting them was easy, but once it got to the final few, they would take off as soon as they saw my dad or uncle come outside or peek around the house. My dad actually had to snipe them out of the second-story window to get rid of them. I feel bad for the birds, but they were destructive and obnoxious, and I don't see any other practical way they could have gotten rid of them. My dad shot a crow and threw its body in the field out back as a warning to the others. For about half an hour, the sky was dark and crows circling around and cawing. We were pretty much sure they were going to be murdered by a murderer. Jesus, dude. There was a flock of little birds outside of a French bakery in California. They would pick at bits of scones and croissants people threw away in the trash cans nearby. And many of them would approach people for scraps. We noticed one particular bird hopping around on one leg begging for scraps. We gave it a little bit of our bread. As soon as it had the bit of food in its beak, I swear to God it looked right at me and dropped its other leg to the ground. Lots of birds will react will retract one leg while idling on the ground. It flexes one leg and rests another tired leg. I doubt he was faking being disabled in order to grift you. That is pretty smart. My dog once outsmarted me. He tricked me into getting up to let him out on a cold winter morning. Only as soon as I turned the corner, he jumped up into my warm spot in the bed, curled up tight, and then suddenly ignored me when I came back into the room. That jackass, best dog ever. There was a crow who would drop walnuts on the road waiting for cars to run them over. It would then wait at the crosswalk with people for the light to change. When it would walk over and eat the broken walnut. Here is a video showing this. This is exactly what I was thinking of when I read this thread. I was like, oh, I remember those crows in Japan who drop walnuts at a crosswalk, wait for cars to run them over, and then they wait for the people to cross the street in order to go eat them. There is a video. I have it linked in my original comment. We used to have 2 kittens. One day at the dinner table, one of them stood up and put 2 paws in my dad's lap. We all laughed at her obvious attempt at trying to steal food. While our attention was focused on her, her sister jumped straight into the table and stole a whole chicken drumstick. They both sprinted away and shared it nearby. We were all impressed. We used to have 2 chickens. I was terrified for the ending of the story at first. Just up the street from my apartment in San Francisco, there was one of those fast food restaurants that was either a KFC or a Taco Bell, depending on the angle from which it was viewed. The establishment was a frequent stopping point for students coming from the nearby college, and those students were a frequent target for a remarkably bright crow. Now, on most days, the bird in question would just hang around the restaurant, as well as other ones nearby, and scavenge for scraps. Every once in a while, though, I saw this happen twice, and it had to happen to me once. It would enact a much more complex scheme than simply going through the gutter. The crow had apparently discovered that money could be exchanged for food, so would wait until it saw a likely mark, squawk at them to get their attention, then pick up and drop a coin. Anyone who responded would witness the bird hopping a few feet away, then following its victim towards the source of its next snack. When the crow approached me, it dropped a nickel on the ground. I stopped, picked up the coin, and then jumped slightly when the bird made a noise that sounded not unlike taco. Needless to say, I bought that crow a taco. The final out-of-pocket cost for me, minus the nickel, was something like $1.15. Even so, I figured a bird that smart deserved a reward simply for existing. Of course, that was probably exactly what I was supposed to think. A crow paid me 5 cents to buy it a taco. Crows and ravens are fucking brilliant and beautiful birds, and I want one as a companion. TIL. Crows will take over the world. I was once walking from my grandparents' house to the shops and accidentally went the very long way, which happened to go past a creek. There may have been more water I couldn't see, and the park where the ducks like to live. I saw 2 ducks walk towards the road, and at the edge, one duck put its wing in front of the other duck to stop it, looked both ways and waited for a car to pass, walked to the center line of the road with the other duck, and repeated, I have never regretted not bringing my camera more. Ducks were waiting to cross the street. That's crazy. Most humans don't even do that. Oh, that's funny. That reminded me of some deer I watched come out of the woods to cross a road. One deer came forward, looked up and down the road, then looked over its shoulder at the others, as if to say, it's okay, come on. Then they all crossed the road. The first deer was the crossing guard. This was my dog. I was eating a bagel on the couch, and he was sitting on the floor next to me, just eyeing me down. You could tell he wanted some, but I wasn't giving in to his cute persuasions. He calmly walks over the mud room door and rings his bell that lets us know that he has to go to the bathroom. So I get off the couch, put my bagel on the coffee table, and walk into the mud room. Well, between the time I got up and walked into the mud room, he ran around back through the kitchen and had snagged my bagel off the table. I didn't even try to get it back for him. The slick bastard deserved his prize. I realized who was the smartest bean in the house that day. That dog Pavloved the hell out of you with that bell. My dog pooped in an ex-girlfriend's shoe. I had a large, lovable Great Dane, about 140 pounds. One day, my husband, my sister-in-law, and I were sitting in the living, watching my 3-year-old niece play with the dog on the floor. At one point, my niece grabbed the dog stuffed toy and walked away with it. The dog got up and followed her to where she stood in the corner. So my niece is standing in the corner playing with the toy and facing the wall, and my large dog is looming behind her, looking over her shoulder at the toy he has in her hands. The dog turns back and looks at us grown-ups on the couch, then looks back at the toy, then looks back at us, then back at the toy. Finally, he turned his head, and staring at us, lifted his giant dog foot and punched my niece's head into the wall in front of her. She immediately exploded into tears, dropped the toy, and stood there sobbing and holding her forehead. The dog calmly and very daintily picked up the toy and took it to its bed and lay down. The system failed him, so he had to take justice into his own hands. The video of a crow flying up to some random guy and saying, "Fuck you." Apparently, birds like cockatoos and parrots in Australia that were pets and get free essentially teach wild birds the human words they were taught. This means flocks of swearing birds occasionally. We once came home to find my dog had ripped into a multi-pack of mini chocolate bars and sweets and gone to town on them. However, we couldn't bring ourselves to tell him off because he's also placed an unopened chocolate on my bed, my sister's bed, and my parents' bed. I guess he thought if he shared the chocolate with all of us, we wouldn't be mad. Oh God, was he okay? Bigger dogs can actually handle a decent amount of chocolate in their system. It's not good for them, but they aren't at risk unless they eat a lot. My cat likes laser toys. We kept him entertained with one for several months. When we moved, we lost it, but then after a couple months we found it. Almost immediately after shining a bright red spot on the carpet, he looked at the person holding the laser pointer, and now all he wants to do is bite the actual laser thing, not the spot. Killer whales baiting birds to come closer so they can eat them. Orcas, the badasses of the sea. My cat wanted me to get up from my desk to pay attention to her. I was wearing earbuds. She kept getting in front of the computer screen. I kept pushing her away from it. I finally gave up, took the earbuds out of my ears, and placed them on the desk. She picked up the earbuds in her mouth, walked to the end of the desk with them, and dropped them in the wastebasket, then sat down in front of me and making eye contact. I think I got told. Remembered another one. I had 3 barn cats. Every morning, all 3 would wait at the door for their breakfast. To get breakfast faster, the male cat would purposefully bite the smaller female cat to make her yelp out loud, knowing that would make me hurry to the door to feed them. My oldest dog, Pug, constructed a staircase from moving boxes to get on our pub-height dining room table. They were in the same room, but not near each other. How the fuck did a pug do that? I would expect him just to fall into the box and ram his head against the wall. When I was in kindergarten, we went to the zoo. The first enclosure is a big area with what I think were chimpanzees. It was too long ago to remember. There was a sign, apparently, that said that you had to be silent to not disturb the monkeys. This one kid, Frederick, didn't shut his mouth, and a monkey just grabbed a peanut and threw it at him over 70 yards and hit him. Threw it over 70 yards and hit the kid right in the head. That shut him up. 70 yards in a kid's eyes equals 17 actual yards. I don't think a peanut was the mass or weight to be thrown that far. ITT. He figured it out. I've been staring at this for like 10 minutes, and I swear the right end of the stick goes through the wood of the railing. Each time the doorbell rang, my cat would run and hide behind the furniture next to the door, slip out the door as soon as it opened, and run straight for a small hole under the fence where she knew I couldn't catch her. She'd be back after a couple hours of being an outdoor wildcat. An octopus removed the lid of a jar. What? How is it going to remove that from inside? Do it, octopus. Oh wow, it figured it out. Octopuses are gross. Did it get it? Yeah, it did. Yield. I had a German Shepherd Chow mix who was incredibly smart and loyal. She was a rescue our family picked up from a shelter when she was about 8 months old. Her name was Jazz, and I have never seen another like her. When my brother was about 2 years old, he learned to unlock and open doors. We had a fence in the backyard with a large pool. We did have a sturdy cover over the pool this time because it was dead of winter, but some water seeped on the top of the cover, like most covers, if you were to try to walk across it. Wait, what? One day, my brother opened the back door and headed straight for the pool. The lady who helped clean our house saw what was happening through the window over the sink. She screamed, and we all ran outside to get him. What we saw was my wonderful dog stand in front of him, gently take his hand in her mouth, and lead him away from the pool. She was incredible. I wonder if my cats will go sniff at the litter box, then stand behind it and take a shit, while staring me down for the entire duration of her movement, if the box is even the least bit smelly. Then stand behind it and take a shit. Then she'll sit there and scratch at the floor beside it, feigning burying in it, like, oh, so you're just gonna pretend you scooped the litter, huh? Well, then I'm just gonna go ahead and pretend to bury the stinking pile of shit, yeah? Thanks, Rooster. Two of my older dogs are Pinto and Rex. Everyone loves Rex. He's chill and looks like the dog from Gone with the Wind. Pinto's an asshole and the smarter of the two. One day, Pinto saw Rex into the backyard with a toy. Pinto jumped on the trampoline and kept still with an eye on him until he walked next to the trampoline. Pinto then leaps on top of Rex like a fucking ninja and takes down the unaware Rex, takes the toy, and gets the fuck out of there. There's a dog of note in Gone with the Wind. I guess. I didn't know. We used to have. I'm gonna skip all the ones with dogs and cats. Let's see. Well, here we go. Not sure this is what you're looking for. One day I went to the park with my son and we saw a bird by a pond. It caught a large fish and tried to swallow it whole, but the fish was too large for its throat. So this bird flipped and spinner the fish around in its beak a few times. Then a look of recognition flashed in its eyes as its brain finally registered the impossible size of the fish. It casually dropped the fish back to the pond and walked away. No regret, no hard feelings. Nature is so wonderful sometimes. What? Okay. Back when Guitar Hero 2 came out, I was always on that shit. My Shiba Inu didn't like the attention not going to her. So I'm sitting on the floor with the guitar controller in hand, staring at the TV, and she wants to go out and play. So she walks over to my PS2 that's on the floor, lays down in front of it to pause at only once, hitting the eject button. No idea how she knew the object controlled what was frustrating her. Like, why not the controller in my hands or the TV I'm staring at? Probably coincidence, but shit looked calculated. Wolves hunting in a pack. Tigers are worse. Once, when I was volunteering in South Africa, they adapted the enrichment enclosure so that there was a small cage inside, so volunteers could be the ones inside the cage and watch the animals play, chase reels, etc. Usually when they let in a new animal, it would check out the cage first, since it was a new thing. The first time they did it, they wanted to show us a difference in personalities between a lion and a tiger. So they bring the lion in, it rubs against the cage a bit, then starts romping around and playing like a giant, dopey murder son dog. After taking the lion back to its enclosure, they bring in the tiger. It completely ignores the handler and heads straight for the cage. It slowly walks along the wall and looks each of us in the eye. You could see it was figuring out 10 different ways to kill you within 10 seconds. It was an amazing and humbling experience until I went to the door and laid in front of it. Okay. Let's see. It's happened back with my roommate. We all met up for a birthday party, going out. Someone brought over a box of 20 Taco Bell tacos. My roommate's dog feigned. Okay, another one with a dog. My dog. Video of a crow actually solving puzzles to get treats. how about I just end it here? They're basically all about dogs and shit anyway.